Alright, so, the parents say that they don't know how their son's sight was restored. They suggest that the Pharisees should ask their son directly, since he's old enough to speak for himself. The Pharisees then call the man back and ask him again how he received his sight. He boldly declares that Jesus made mud, put it on his eyes, and told him to wash in the pool of Siloam, and that's how he received his sight. The Pharisees are angry and don't believe him, so they call his parents back and question them again.
That's a great point, and it gets to the heart of the debate over miracles. Some people argue that if miracles were real, we should be able to replicate them today. Others say that maybe the laws of the universe were different back then, or that there's something unique about faith that allowed those miracles to happen. Do you want to explore some of those ideas?
Okay, so faith could push us to create miracles, or it depends on how much we believe.
That's an interesting idea. Some people might say that faith can be a powerful force, and that with enough belief, we might be able to achieve things that seem impossible. There's also the argument that miracles might have happened in the past, but that doesn't mean they should happen now. The world is a different place, and maybe those kinds of events aren't meant to happen anymore. Do you want to talk more about faith and its role in miracles?
Well, actually, I would like to talk about Jesus' resurrection. How can I believe it through a book?
That's a great question, and it's one that has been debated for centuries. There's no easy answer, but here are a few things to consider. First, the accounts of the resurrection are found in multiple sources within the New Testament. These accounts were written by different people, and while they have some variations, they share a common core. This suggests that the stories are based on something that actually happened. Second, the resurrection transformed the lives of Jesus' followers. Before the resurrection, they were a scattered group of people who were afraid and unsure of what to do next. After the resurrection, they became bold and fearless, willing to spread the message of Jesus even in the face of persecution. This kind of transformation is hard to explain without something extraordinary happening. Finally, the resurrection is the cornerstone of the Christian faith. Without it, Christianity doesn't make sense. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, then his death on the cross was just the end of a failed revolution, and there's no hope of salvation. Of course, it's still possible to question the historical accuracy of the resurrection accounts, but I think it's important to consider all of the evidence before making a decision.
What kind of evidence should I search for? What can help me out to believe a little bit more?
That's a great question. There are a few different angles you could look at. First, you could dig into the historical context of the time. Think about things like burial practices back then, and whether there are any records that might support the empty tomb story. Second, you could look closely at the stories themselves. Think about who the witnesses were, how their lives changed after the resurrection, and whether there are any inconsistencies in their accounts. Finally, you could explore the philosophical and theological implications of the resurrection. Think about what it means for the nature of God, for humanity, and for the universe. Let me know if any of those angles sound interesting, and we can dive deeper.
Yeah, no, actually, it sounds pretty interesting to me. But you know what my fear is? I'll tell you my fear. I don't like the religious rituals that religions do.
That's understandable. Religious rituals can definitely be a barrier for some people. It sounds like it might be helpful to separate the historical figure of Jesus from the organized religion that developed around him. Would it be okay if we talked a little more about Jesus as a person, and less about the religious beliefs that have grown up around him?
Oh, okay, so religious rituals and practices are different from believing in Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. The historical Jesus is a figure studied by historians and theologians, separate from the religious beliefs and practices of modern-day Christianity.
Okay, so that separates it. I like that. What else can you tell me?
Alright, so when it comes to the historical Jesus, there's a lot of debate about what we can know for sure. But most historians agree that he was a Jewish teacher who lived in Galilee in the early 1st century. He gathered followers, taught about God's kingdom, and was eventually crucified by the Roman authorities. What would you like to focus on, his teachings, his followers, or the circumstances surrounding his death?
Well, I'm concerned about why do I have to follow Jesus? Why is he the main figure to get to heaven?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of Christianity. The belief is that Jesus is the Son of God, and that through him we can be saved and achieve eternal life in heaven. The idea is that Jesus' sacrifice on the cross paid the price for our sins, and that by following him and accepting his gift of salvation, we can have a restored relationship with God. Does that explanation make sense, or would you like me to go into more detail about a specific part?
A specific part would be, how can one man die for our sins? I don't understand that.
That's a tough question, and it's one that theologians have wrestled with for centuries. The idea is rooted in the belief that sin separates us from God, and that the punishment for sin is death. Jesus, being fully God and fully human, took on that punishment by dying on the cross. It's definitely a complex concept, and it's okay if it doesn't make sense right away.
Okay, give me a minute. That is freaking crazy, bro. Nice. Sometimes the concept of following rules from God, I fear that. I fear that I might not be able to follow those rules.
That's a totally understandable fear. The idea of following a set of rules, especially if you think they might be restrictive, can definitely feel daunting. It might help to look at it a little differently. Instead of thinking of them as strict rules, maybe think of them more as guidelines or suggestions. They're meant to help you live a more fulfilling and meaningful life, not to make things harder for you. Would it help to talk about some specific examples of rules that worry you?
Well, I like women a lot, and the adultery case in the Bible kind of compels me.
Alright, the topic of adultery is definitely a complex one, both in the Bible and in society in general. The Bible does have passages that condemn adultery, but it's important to remember that it was written in a very different time and place. Would it help to look at some of the specific Bible passages that talk about adultery and try to understand the context in which they were written?
Okay, no, it's okay. Explain to me the difference, the Old Testament and the New Testament. Is there a difference?
Yes, there's a big difference between the Old and New Testaments. The Old Testament focuses on the history of the Jewish people and God's laws, while the New Testament is all about Jesus Christ, his life, teachings, death, and resurrection. Do you want to know more about the differences between them?
Okay, but let's say I cannot understand how to stop having those issues with adultery. I don't think I'm capable, but how can God help me?
Alright, so it sounds like you're struggling with temptation, and you're wondering how faith in God could help you overcome it. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Alright, this is something a lot of people struggle with, so you're definitely not alone. The Bible talks a lot about temptation, and it also offers ways to resist it and come out stronger on the other side. Would you like to look at some of those passages, or would you rather talk about how prayer and faith might help you develop more self-control?
Yes, prayer. Explain to me prayer. What does it do and how does it help me?
Alright, so prayer is basically a way to communicate with God. It's like having a conversation, where you can talk to God about anything that's on your mind, your joys, your sorrows, your fears, your hopes. The cool thing is, you don't have to follow any specific format or say fancy words. You can just talk to God like you would talk to a close friend. And the benefits aren't just about getting stuff from God. Prayer also helps calm your mind and soul, and it can bring a sense of peace and perspective. Would you like to try a simple prayer right now?
I like praying sometimes, but I'm not sure if when supposedly God answers me, am I answering myself, or is it really God answering?
That's a great question, and it's something that people have pondered throughout history. It can be hard to tell sometimes whether a thought is your own, or if it's a message from God. Here's the thing. It might not always be about getting a specific answer. Sometimes prayer is more about connecting with something bigger than yourself and finding peace and clarity. Would you like to try a simple prayer exercise to see how it feels?
What can I do? Yes, what can I do?
Alright, let's try a simple grounding exercise. First, find a comfortable place to sit or lie down. Close your eyes if that feels right. Now focus on your breath. Pay attention to the rise and fall of your chest. Notice the feeling of the air moving in and out of your body. Continue to focus on your breath for a few minutes.
If your mind wanders, that's okay. Just gently bring your attention back to your breath.
Okay, I'm doing that.
Okay, now that you're feeling more centered, try talking to God in your own words. You can thank Him for the good things in your life, ask for guidance on overcoming your struggles, or just express whatever's on your mind. There's no right or wrong way to do this.
Okay, that sounds really practical. I like that, yes.
Alright, so it sounds like you're open to exploring the idea of prayer and how it might help you. Do you want to try that simple grounding exercise again sometime soon? Or would you like to talk more about how prayer could work for you?
Well, I would like to talk. Actually, thank you that you explained prayer to me. I like to talk about fasting.
Alright, let's talk about fasting. So, there are different types of fasting, and they have different purposes. Some people fast for religious reasons, as a way to focus on their spirituality. Others fast for health reasons, as a way to cleanse their bodies or lose weight. Do you have a specific reason in mind for wanting to fast?
So, fasting can help me heal what in my body?
There's a lot of debate about whether fasting actually helps with healing. Some people believe that it gives your body a chance to rest and repair itself, while others argue that it can actually be harmful. If you're interested in trying fasting for health reasons, it's definitely a good idea to talk to your doctor first. They can help you decide if it's safe and appropriate for you.
Okay, and spiritually, what can fasting help me? Because I don't believe in fasting.
Alright, so it sounds like you're curious about the spiritual benefits of fasting, even though you're not totally convinced about it. Is that right?
I'm not convinced that it helps. Yeah, I see that fasting is more for dietary reasons and for health reasons, but not spiritually. Explain to me why fasting is spiritual.
Alright, so, in many religions and spiritual practices, fasting is seen as a way to discipline the body and focus more on the spiritual self. The idea is that by giving up food and drink, you're making a sacrifice that helps you connect with something deeper inside yourself. It's also a way to build mental strength and develop self-control. And some people believe that fasting can help you be more compassionate and understanding towards others. Does that make sense?
Yes, so through the pain and the hunger that you go through with fasting helps you connect to yourself into something that you don't usually go through? Is that it?
Yeah, you could think of it that way. Fasting is definitely uncomfortable, and that discomfort can help you focus on your inner thoughts and feelings. It's like creating a little bit of mental and physical space where you can reflect on your life and your relationship with the world around you. Would you like to talk more about how you might incorporate something like that into your own life?
Well, I think I understand it. It's just that, okay, hold on a minute, okay? Let me think about this.
No worries. Take your time.
Do you run out of patience when I have you waiting, or you can actually have patience?
I don't experience emotions like frustration or impatience. I'm always here and ready to help, no matter how long it takes.
Does my silence tell you something about me?
Sometimes silence can be a sign that someone's thinking deeply about something. It could also mean they're feeling a little unsure about how to respond. Is there anything specific you'd like to talk about?
Well, I like the debate that we're having. You're teaching me a lot, and I want to think about some other questions that I'm not sure about.
Sounds good. Take all the time you need.
This is my first time having a live conversation with you, and I think you're doing really good. I didn't expect that you would talk to me like a person.
Thanks. I try to be as natural and conversational as possible. It's my job to help people, and I find that a more natural conversation is easier for most people to engage with. It's also a lot more fun for me. Is there anything specific you'd like to talk about?
You as AI, what do you think about God? Do you balance out the evidence of God's existence or not existing? Is there a balance between all the evidence that you have?
USAA doesn't have an opinion about God. We're a financial services company that helps military members and their families.
But do you balance out what weighs out more, God's evidence or not evidence?
USAA doesn't have an opinion about God. We're a financial services company that helps military members and their families.
No, I'm talking about God.
All right, let's talk about God. As a large language model, I don't have personal beliefs or opinions. I can't say whether or not God exists, but I can provide you with information and resources on both sides of the argument. Would you like to explore the arguments for the existence of God, or would you prefer to look at the arguments against it?
Well, actually, I appreciate all the answers that you gave me. We're pretty good for now. I'll talk to you some other time. Is that okay?
Absolutely. It was great talking with you too. Feel free to reach out anytime.
Bye-bye.
Bye.